Karoline Leavitt sat at the view table on a Friday morning that felt colder than the lights overhead. The applause when she walked out was polite but tense, like the audience knew this was not going to stay friendly for long. She sat up straight, her hands folded neatly on the table, her eyes moving calmly from Whoopi to Joy, Sunny, and Sarah. Whoopi opened first, her voice clipped but polite. She said, "Karoline Leavitt, thank you for being here. A lot of people have opinions about you, and I know you have opinions about us." Karoline didn't flinch. She said, "I'm here because I think people deserve to hear all sides, even when it makes some people uncomfortable." A few soft claps came from the audience, but died quickly. Sarah leaned forward first, trying to set a careful tone. She said, "You've become a rising star in conservative politics, but you've been accused of spreading half-truths. Do you stand by everything you've said on the trail?" Karoline's eyes stayed steady on Sarah. She said, "I stand by the truth. The difference is some people don't like when you say it out loud." Joy rolled her eyes just enough for the cameras to catch. She said, "So you're the truth teller, and everyone else is lying? How convenient." Karoline didn't blink. She said, "No, Joy. I'm just not paid to pretend the truth doesn't exist." The audience murmured. A few people clapped once, some just crossed their arms tighter. Sunny leaned in next, her voice smooth but sharp underneath. She said, "You've accused the media, people like us, of lying to the public. Are you really saying we sit here and just push lies for fun?" Karoline turned to Sunny. Her voice stayed calm. She said, "Not for fun, for profit, for power, and for control." Joy barked out a laugh. She said, "You sound like a conspiracy theorist." Karoline didn't raise her voice. She said, "Joy, you accuse half the country of being conspiracy theorists when they won't repeat your script back to you." Whoopi held up a hand. She said, "Let's keep this civil. Karoline, if you think we're lying, say what you think we're lying about." Karoline leaned forward, her voice still flat, but every word hitting its mark. She said, "You lie when you tell Americans they're helpless. You lie when you pretend dissent is danger. You lie when you say there's only one right way to think." The audience reacted. Some clapped, some hissed. A faint buzz rose in the room. Sarah cut in, trying to hold the line. She said, "That's a pretty broad brush. You don't think we believe what we say?" Karoline looked at Sarah, eyes steady. She said, "I think you believe it when it keeps you in the good graces of the right people. But you know better. Deep down, you know people deserve more than sound bites." Joy slammed her pen down, her voice sharper now. She said, "You come on this show and insult us, and you expect what?" Applause. Karoline's shoulders didn't move. She said, "I expect you to hear it for once instead of shouting it down." Whoopi leaned closer, her tone low but tight. She said, "So what do you want us to do, Karoline? You come here swinging. What's your point?" Karoline's voice stayed flat. She said, "My point is simple. Stop lying to America." The words hit like a stone dropped in the middle of the table. The audience gasped, half clapping, half shaking their heads. Joy leaned forward, eyes wide. She said, "Say that again." Karoline didn't flinch. She said, "Stop lying to America." Joy's hands pressed flat on the table, her mouth twisting into something halfway between a smile and a snarl. She said, "You have some nerve. You come here and call us liars to our faces." Karoline didn't blink. She said, "If you're telling the truth, you shouldn't be so rattled." The audience stirred. A few people clapped once, others murmured under their breath. Sunny leaned in tighter, her voice sharper now. She said, "You don't think you push lies too? You twist facts, you exaggerate, you make claims you can't prove." Karoline turned to Sunny, her tone calm but colder. She said, "Difference is, I don't hide behind polite TV panels and pretend I'm everyone's moral compass." Sarah spoke up, her tone trying to soften the air. She said, "Karoline, you're young. You don't think there's value in listening before you accuse." Karoline's eyes moved to Sarah. She said, "Sarah, the problem is people spend too long listening to things they know aren't true because they're afraid of being called names if they say so." Whoopi's tone turned rougher. She said, "So what do you want? You want people to agree with you just because you shout louder?" Karoline leaned forward, voice steady. She said, I want people to remember they're allowed to think for themselves, even if this table says otherwise. Joy let out a single harsh laugh. She said, spare me. You're not here for the people. You're here for your clips to go viral. Karoline's tone dropped so flat the room seemed to hold its breath. She said, if telling people to stop lying makes me go viral, maybe that's not my problem. The audience clapped louder, still split down the middle, but enough to drown out Joy for a moment. Sunny tapped her pen on the table. She said, what do you think you're doing differently, huh? You talk like you're some hero. Karoline said, I'm not a hero. I'm just tired of seeing Americans being talked to like they're too stupid to see through the spin. Joy stood halfway, her chair screeching on the floor. She said, you know what you are? You're smug. You don't answer real questions, you just insult. Karoline stayed seated. She didn't raise her voice. She said, ask me a real question, Joy. Not the same old script. Joy's mouth hung open for a heartbeat, then shut again. Sarah looked around the table, her tone hushed. She said, this is getting too personal. Karoline turned to her. She said, it was personal the second you told millions of people they were wrong for thinking for themselves. Whoopi's voice cut in, strained. She said, Karoline, you're here to talk policy, not to sit here and lecture us on honesty. Karoline leaned back in her chair, her eyes steady. She said, honesty is the only policy that matters. Maybe you forgot that. Joy pointed a finger across the table. She said, get off your soapbox or get off this stage. Karoline tilted her head slightly. She said, you don't want the soapbox, Joy? Maybe you should stop giving me the mic. The audience clapped again, louder this time, a few people on their feet. Sunny's voice dropped to a cold whisper. She said, you want to walk out so bad, go ahead. Karoline's eyes didn't move. She said, not yet. People at home haven't heard enough. Joy's laugh came out sharp and forced. She said, you think you're so important, huh? You think people can't live without hearing you scold us? Karoline's voice didn't rise. She said, I think people are tired of being scolded for asking questions you don't want to answer. Sunny's eyes narrowed. She said, so what do you want us to do, Karoline? Sit here and nod while you call us liars. Karoline leaned in, her tone calm but cutting. She said, I want you to admit you don't have all the answers. I want you to stop talking like you do. Whoopi's hands pressed flat on the table, her voice low but tense. She said, you think you're helping this country by making people trust the truth even less. Karoline's eyes didn't waver. She said, trust the truth more. Just stop calling your spin the truth. The audience clapped, louder this time, half the room on their feet, half crossing their arms tighter. Joy's finger jabbed the table once. She said, you're nothing but another angry politician yelling for attention. Karoline didn't blink. She said, no, Joy. I'm the reminder that your seat at this table doesn't make you right. Sarah's voice cracked, trying to keep it together. She said, people want hope, Karoline, not just anger. Karoline's tone softened, but the edge stayed. She said, then give them real hope, not the kind you read off a teleprompter. Whoopi's shoulders tensed. She said, so what now? You done tearing us apart? Karoline stood slowly, pushing her chair back with a quiet scrape. She said, I'm not tearing you apart. I'm telling people to put themselves back together. Joy barked out a half laugh. She said, get out. Get off this set if all you want to do is insult us. Karoline's voice dropped to a whisper, but the words cut deeper. She said, stop lying to America. That's not an insult. That's a favor. The audience clapped hard. A few boos, but drowned under the cheers that wouldn't stop. Sunny's eyes locked on her, voice like ice. She said, run away, Karoline. It's all you people ever do when you can't control the room. Karoline stepped back, eyes steady, no rush in her movements. She said, keep the room, keep the lights, keep the spin. Just remember, people see you now. Whoopi leaned in, her tone flat with disbelief. She said, you really think you changed minds today? Karoline paused at the edge of the stage. She looked back one last time. She said, not minds, but maybe a few backbones. She walked out. No handlers, no cameras trailing her down the hall. just her footsteps echoing in a studio that suddenly felt too quiet. Joy sat there stiff, her pen drumming once, twice, but no words came out. Sarah just looked down at the table. Sunny crossed her arms tighter, staring where Karoline had stood. Whoopi watched the exit curtain like she was waiting for it to move again, but it didn't. The clip spread before the lights even dimmed. Some people called her rude. Some called her real. Some called her exactly the thing they'd been waiting to hear. And somewhere, in living rooms across the country, the same words repeated, "Stop lying to America." Karoline didn't say goodbye. She didn't need to.